The test came back at 99.97%. My sister was pregnant. My boyfriend was the father. And I was standing in a bathroom stall at work, holding my phone like it was a loaded gun, trying to figure out what you do when the two people you trusted most build a bomb and leave it ticking in your living room. I should have seen it coming. I guess I did see it coming, in the way you see a car crash in slow motion and still don't move out of the way. It started 9 months ago, on a Tuesday night in January, when I got a text from Daniel at 10 o'clock. Mallory's here. She won't leave. I drove across the river in my pajamas, heart hammering, and found my sister sitting on Daniel's couch in a dress so tight it looked painted on, legs crossed, lipstick perfect, swirling a glass of his wine like she owned the place. I stood in the doorway and looked from one to the other. Daniel was leaning against the mantel, arms crossed, face tight. Mallory smiled at me, that light, easy smile she used when she was about to say something she could later claim was a joke. "Relax," she said. "I was just telling Daniel that if he ever gets bored of my sister." She let her eyes drift over to him, slow and deliberate. "He knows I'd treat him better." I asked her if she was kidding. She smirked. Actually smirked. "You're overreacting. I was just testing, seeing if he'd bite." He didn't, by the way. "You're what?" I looked at Daniel. He didn't meet my... He stared at a spot on the wall over my shoulder and said she'd shown up unannounced, that he'd texted me as soon as he... That should have been when I said, "No, this isn't okay. Get out, both of you." Instead, I took a breath. I looked at my little... The one I'd shared a bedroom with until I was 14. The one I'd driven to the ER at 19 when she had a panic attack. "Come on. I'll take..." I didn't ask what happened before I got there. I didn't ask why she was still there 20 minutes after Daniel. I didn't ask about the wine or the dress or the way Daniel wouldn't me. I followed it, all of it. Because asking meant the answer might be something I couldn't. And if I couldn't unhear it, I might leave. And leaving meant starting over at 4. And starting over felt... So I drove her home. I went back to my apartment and showered and got into bed and stared at the ceiling. In the morning, when Daniel called and said he was sorry, it was weird, that Mallory was drinking. It's fine, it wasn't fine, but And then I spent the next 9 months pretending. The pretending ended on a Monday in August. I was in the kitchen, dripping, hair still wet from the shower, went off. 3 short presses, like some... My phone. Text, no call. Walked to the door, and I already knew who it would be before I looked. Mallory was standing on the welcome mat in a sweatshirt that didn't quite clear her stomach, tears running down her face in tiny tracks. Hair was greasy, pulled back in a knot half falling out, and she was holding a duffel bag like it weighs. I unlocked the deadbolt, but didn't open away. "What are you doing here?" Her mouth trembled. "Ethan left. He took his stuff and he left. And the landlord says I'm 2 months behind and he's changing the locks on Friday. I don't have where to go, Clara. I don't have anybody." The baby. My eyes went to her stomach, huge and tight under the sweatshirt, and then back to her face. It was due in 3 weeks, maybe 4. She was pregnant. She'd posted an ultrasound on Instagram in February emoji. But we hadn't spoken since Thanksgiving, and even then it had been polite. The kind of conversation you have with someone you're related to, really like. I could feel the same thing months ago, where in your body, that opened this door is a mistake, but you can't figure out how to close it. She was my sister. She was pregnant. She had nowhere to go. "I just need 2 days," she said. Her voice cracked. "Until I figure something out. I'll sleep on the couch. I won't even be here during the day. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow." "Come in," I said. I held the door open. She hesitated for half a second. She couldn't believe it had worked, and then she stepped inside, dragging over the threshold. Shut behind her. I showed her to the guest room, the one I used for storage, a twin bed and a bookshelf facing the alley. She sat down on the edge of the bed and put her hands and cried harder. That shakes your shoulders. And I stood in the doorway and... "I'll make..." I said, and left. In the kitchen, I leaned against and closed my eyes. The coffee was cold already. I could hear Mallory's nose in the other room. I thought about Daniel, how careful he'd been these last nights, how attentive, how he'd started bringing me flowers for no reason, and remembering what I said, and never, ever mention Mallory's name unless I did first. I'd told myself it was guilt about the situation, being inappropriate. I had not let myself want something else. The phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up. "Daniel, can we There's something I need to tell you." I stared at the screen. Behind me, in the guest gallery, was still crying. Outside, a truck rumbled down the street. The morning light came through the kitchen window, pale, Portland August, and I held the phone in my hand and felt the floor shift feet, just slightly. Like something that had been balanced for a very long was finally starting to tip. I didn't know then about the Uber trips. I didn't know about the 3 nights Daniel had gone to her apartment. He claimed nothing happened. Know about the lie they'd built together. Him story they'd both agreed on. The 9 months of silence I'd volunteered because the truth was too heavy. I would know soon. In 5 days I would find the Uber history on a shared account I'd forgotten I had. In 7 days Daniel would break down and confess on my couch. In 2 weeks, I would stand in a hospital room and listen to a doctor say a due date that didn't add up. And in a little over a month I would stand in that bathroom stall at work, holding a phone that had 99.97%. And I would finally understand the bomb had been ticking the whole time. I had been the one holding the... But that morning, I knew was that my sister was in my guest room. My boyfriend had something to tell me. And I texted back, "Okay, come over." I put the phone down, and I waited. And I did not know yet that I was about to lose everything I'd spent 9 months pretending to protect. I didn't text Daniel back that morning. I put my phone face down on the counter and went through the motions of a Monday. Showered, got dressed, ate half a piece of toast, called my boss to say I was working from home. Mallory slept until noon, which I told myself was fine because she was pregnant and stressed. And then she emerged looking like she'd been through a war, hair matted, eyes swollen, and asked if there was anything to eat. There was. I made her eggs and toast, and she ate like someone who hadn't seen food in days, which maybe she hadn't. I watched her and thought about how strange it was that this woman, this person who had sat on my boyfriend's couch in a painted-on dress 9 months ago and smiled while she did, was now at my kitchen table with ketchup on her chin, and I was making her breakfast. By mid-afternoon, she was feeling better. She showered, borrowed my robe, and came out to the living room where I was pretending to work. She sat on the couch, put her feet up on my coffee table, and started scrolling her phone. "So," she said, like we were old friends catching up. "You and Daniel still going strong?" I didn't look up. "Yeah, good. He's a good guy, solid. You know I always liked Dan." My fingers stopped on the keyboard. I could feel her watching. That casual, measuring look she got when she was testing the wall, seeing how far she could push before I pushed. "Mal." Still not look up. "We need rules." "Rules?" She laughed. "Clara, not a roommate from Craigslist. You're staying in my home. Rules are rule." I closed my laptop. 1, you don't contact. 2, you don't talk about. 3, when you're back on your feet, you find your own place. Her smile. "Okay. Didn't realize I was moving in." "You're not. You're staying for..." Quiet, then said, "I really don't have anywhere." And just that, the edge went out of me. Because it's true. Our parents were in Florida, tired, and the last time Mallory called our mother crying, "I can't keep doing this." "You're one." I'd been on the extension and heard. "I know," I said. "We'll find out. But the rule..." But I could see the calculation box. The same one she'd had since kids. The one that said if I pushed just hard enough. Daniel showed up at 6. I had invited him, but had a key. He'd had one for years. And he let himself in with a paper bag from that Thai place we left, calling out, like it was any normal Tuesday. Then he saw Mal on the couch, and he stopped in the doorway, and the paper bag. "Hey, Daniel," Mallory said. She was with my robe, and she'd done something with her hair, and she was sitting with one leg tucked under her in a way I recognized as deliberate. "Clara didn't tell me you were coming." He looked at me. "Didn't know you were..." "I brought food. That's so sweet." She smiled. "You always were a thoughtful one." I stood up. "Daniel." In the kitchen, the door closed. He set the bag on the counter and ran here. "She's here? She's actually staying here? She has nowhere to go." "She's 8, Daniel." Clara, after what she did. "What did she do, Daniel?" My voice was sharper than I intended. "You never would tell me. You just said she showed up and was inappropriate and you texted me. But what happened before I got there?" Face closed off. What was his tell? When he didn't want to talk about something, his whole face went smooth, like an mask. "I told you what happened. She showed up drunk. She said some stuff. I told her to leave. She wouldn't. I texted you." That's it. I stared at him. I wanted to believe him. I'd wanted him for 9 months. But there was something in the way he said it. Too fast, too rehearsed. Like he'd said it so many times he didn't anymore. "Okay." "Okay." We ate dinner in the living room, the 3 of us, and it was the most uncomfortable sat through. Mallory Daniel about his projects, Laughed at things he said in a way that was too warm. Daniel answered in short sentences on his plate. I said almost nothing. When Daniel left, cheek and whispered, later, okay? I nodded, but I didn't call. I stood at the window and watched him walk to his car, and then I turned around and found Mallory standing in the hallway watching me. He still loves you, you know, she said. You're worried about anything. Right. She talked back to the guest room, heard the door click. Later, I couldn't sleep. I got at her and passed the guest room. The door was open a crack, dark inside, but I could hear Mallory's voice urgent on the phone. I don't know, Ethan. I don't know what to do. No, he doesn't know. Not yet. I know. A few more days. I stood in the hallway, water glass in my hand, and listened. He doesn't know. Not yet. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what she wasn't telling him, but I stood there in the dark, and I thought about Daniel's face on that couch. And I thought that morning, thing I need to tell you. And I felt spread through my chest, slow and like water filling a room. I went back to bed. I was in the dark and stared at the ceiling, and I thought I'd said that afternoon. Don't contact Daniel. Don't talk about Daniel. I'd said them like they meant something. But the truth was, I had no control over any of it. I hadn't had control since the night I walked into Daniel's my sister on his couch. I'd just been pretending, and somewhere in the guest room, my sister was on the phone, telling that he didn't know yet, and I had a feeling that he was me. I called Lauren on Tuesday morning while Mallory was at her doctor's appointment. I sat in my car in the grocery store parking lot, engine off, and said, "Tell me I'm not crazy." "You're not crazy," she said immediately. "But you already know that, so what happened?" I told her everything. The door at 7 in the morning, the pregnancy, the guest room, Daniel showing up with Thai food, the phone call at 11. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Clara," Lauren said, and her nurse voice was on, the calm, direct one she used with patients who were avoiding the truth. "You need to ask Daniel what happened that night. Not the version he gave you 9 months ago. The real version." I did ask him. He said what he's been saying for 9 months. "That's not asking, that's listening to a script." She paused. "You've been avoiding this for 9 months. "I know why, but she's in your house now. You don't get to avoid it anymore." I stared at the shopping carts lined up in the corral, swaying in the wind. What if I don't like the answer? Then you don't like it. But at least you know. Not knowing is worse. You've been living in not knowing for 9 months, and look where it got. Mallory came back from her appointment in a better mood. The baby was healthy, she said, measuring right on track, and the doctor had given her a new due date, November 3rd. Give or take. I wrote it on a sticky note and stuck it on the fridge, and then I stood there and did the math. November 3rd. Count back 40 weeks, early February. But that was from the last menstrual period, which meant conception was around mid-February. 9 months ago was... My stomach upped. 9 months ago was late January, early February. The night at Daniel's apartment had been January 20th. I remembered because it was the night before my big presentation work, the one I'd been stressing about. Mid-February. January 20th. There was overlap. There was definitely overlap. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Due dates were estimates. Conception windows were wide. Mallory had been with Ethan for... The baby was almost certain, but the number sat in my head anyway, heavy and warm, like a stone. That evening I asked Mallory about a phone call. The one... Who was Ethan? I thought we broke up. We did. He calls sometimes. He's not... She was folding laundry, or pretending to. I didn't look up. He thinks the baby is... My hand stilled on the washing. Does he have to think that? Up then. And for a second I saw something flat in her face. Fear, maybe. Like it. It was gone. Replaced by the familiar defense. Paranoid. He's always been paranoid. That's why we broke up. Mallory. He set the dish down. Is there a reason he might think he isn't his? No. Too fast. I mean, we're fighting a lot. I went out with friends. He assumed things, but no. There's no reason. I wanted to push. I opened my mouth to push, and then her face crumpled. She said, "Can I right now? I'm tired." And I, who had spent months not pushing, closed my mouth. I called Daniel instead, asked him to come over, and when he got there, I didn't sit down. I stood in the living room and said, "I need you to know what happened that night. The real version. You've been telling me." He set his keys on the table. "Claire, I've told..." "No." My voice was louder than I expected. Startled both of us. "No, you told me a version. You told me she showed up and said some things and you texted me. But you had 20 minutes before I got there." 20 minutes, Daniel. And she was drinking your wine and sitting on your couch like she lived. So tell me what happened. He didn't say anything for a long time. He stood there, hands looked at the floor. She came on me, he said finally. Oh, she came on to me strong. She sat down next to me. She put her hand on my leg. That thing about treating me better. I told her to stop. I told her I was with you. She didn't stop. That's when I texted you. Did you touch her? No. No. Daniel. I didn't, Clara. To God, I didn't. He looked up and his eyes were wet, and I wanted to believe it physically hurt. I love you. I would never. You have to believe me. I did believe him. Or I told myself I did. But I also noticed he had answered the question I'd really asked, the one about what happened in those 20 he'd already admitted. And I let it go, because I was tired, because Mallory was in the next room, and because some part of me might be. That night, I told Mallory to find a place by the end of the week. I'm sorry, I said. I can't have this anymore, she'd argue. She just nodded, and I went in like I'd finally done something. At 3 a.m, I woke up to screaming. I ran to the guest room and found Mallory on the floor, doubled over, clutching her stomach, face white. The baby! Something's wrong. I grabbed keys and my phone and drove her to the hospital, 15 minutes over the speed limit, one hand on the wheel, hers in the passenger seat. In the ER, they put her in a bed and hooked her up to monitor, and a doctor with a calm voice said, Braxton Hicks, false labor. She's fine, the baby's fine, but she's stressed, and can trigger this. She needs rest. The doctor checked the chart. 36 weeks, due November 3rd. Everything looks good. Baby's in could be any time now, really. I sat in the plastic chair next to the bed and listened to the monitor beep. Stem, and I did the math again. November 3rd. Conception around February 24th. The numbers definitely overlapped. Mallory was asleep now, sedated a little, hand still curled around mine. I looked at my face, peaceful in sleep, and thought about all the things I didn't know. I thought about Daniel's wet eyes and his too fast answers. I thought about Ethan's parents and Mallory's too fast denial. And I thought, a clarity that felt like cold water, that I was done not knowing, asking questions and accepting half answers. I was done being the sister who swallowed a girlfriend who pretended The monitor beeped. The baby's heartbeat, strong and steady, filled the room. And I sat there in the fluorescent light, holding my hand, and I made a decision. I was going to find out the truth, even if it destroyed everything. We got home from the hospital at 6 a.m. Mallory went straight to bed, and I sat at the kitchen table with coffee that went cold while I stared at the sticky note on the fridge. November 3rd. I'd written it myself, in my own handwriting, and now it looked like a threat. I told myself to stop. I told myself due dates were estimates. Conception windows were 2 weeks wide. Mallory had been with Ethan for over a year, and the baby was almost certainly his. I told myself all of these things and none of them stuck, because underneath the math was something older and deeper, the thing I'd been carrying for 9 months. The thing I'd swallowed and buried and told myself wasn't there. I didn't trust Daniel. Not fully. Not since that night. At 9 o'clock, I opened my laptop. Daniel and I shared a few accounts. Netflix, Amazon, the food delivery app we used when neither of us wanted to cook. I'd set up the Uber account 2 years ago when his phone died, and he needed a ride home from the airport, and I'd never removed my card. I logged in. The ride history was there. Every trip, every date, every destination. I scrolled back to January 24th. The night of the incident. No rides. He'd been home. January 25th, 26th, 27th. Nothing. Then February 2nd. A pickup at his address in Northwest. Drop-off at an address on Hawthorne, Southeast Portland. Hawthorne was where Mallory lived. My hands were shaking. I clicked on the trip detail. 11:47 p.m. Duration, 23. The driver had dropped off at the corner of Mallory's. I scrolled there. February 3rd. Another trip, same direction, this time at 10:15 p.m. February 10th. Another one, 3 trips. 3 times Daniel had gone to Mallory's neighborhood in the 2 weeks after the night he'd claimed nothing happened. He'd told me he hadn't seen Mallory, hadn't spoken to her, that the whole thing had been a one-time inappropriate incident. But he'd her. 3 times. At night I closed top. I sat in the quiet kitchen and listened to the refrigerator hum, and the distant sound of Mallory snoring and I felt something break. Not dramatically, not with a sound, quietly. The way a bone breaks when you don't realize you've been. I told Daniel. I told him come over. When he arrived, I was sitting on the couch, the laptop open on the table, the Uber history displayed. I didn't look up, came in. I just said, sit down, sat. He hit the screen. February 2nd, I said. February 3rd. February 10th. 3 trips to Hawthorne. 3 trips to my neighborhood. 2 weeks after you told me nothing happened and you to her. Clara, don't. It was flat. Say my name like that. Tell me the truth. All of it. Because if you lied more time, I will at that door, and you... He was quiet for a long time. He put his elbows on his knees and his head in his hands, and when he looked up, his face was crumpled. The math. We slept together, he said. That night. After you took her home, I thinking about it. She texted me. She said she was sorry, that she'd had too much to drink, talk. I went over there, and we slept together. It happened once, and then twice more, and then I told her I couldn't do it anymore, and I haven't seen her until now. The room was very quiet. Clock on the wall. The one I'd gotten at a store for $8, ticking steadily. Testing him, I said. Was that her idea? Came up with it that night. When you walked in, she said it, and I went along with it because I was scared. I was scared you'd leave me, and every day after that, it got harder to tell you, and I kept not telling you. I'm sorry. Clara, I am so sorry. I looked at him. This man I'd loved for 3 years. This man who brought me flowers and remembered my coffee order and held my hand at my grandmother's funeral. This man who had slept with my sister and then lied about it for 9 months while I carried the suspicion like a stone in my chest. Out, said. Clara, please, out of my house. He left. I heard the door close, and then I sat in the silent move for a long time. Then I went to the guest room. Mallory was awake now, sitting up in bed, and she must have heard something because her face was already defensive. He told you, she said. It wasn't a question. I stood in the way. Did you know that he was going to me? She looked away. I knew close. He's been cracking. I texted him a few weeks ago. I told him we needed to do it. He didn't answer. I said, is it his? Her eyes with tears. I don't know, Clara. Ethan and I were together, but we weren't being careful all the time. And Daniel, those nights. I was drunk. I don't know who the father is. Trying not to think about a date. Timing. Crying harder. Scared. I'm so scared. I stood there and looked at my sister, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not pity. Just a vast, empty quiet. Like the moment after a storm when the wind stops, and you realizing is now on the ground. You slept with my boyfriend. My voice was calm, which frightened me. You slept with him, and then you came up with that testing him crap, and you was overreacting for 9 months. And now you're in my house, pregnant. You don't even know who the father is. I know, she whispered. I know I messed up. I know, don't. I turned away. Don't say you know. I have no idea what you did. I went to the bedroom and closed the door, lay down on the bed, fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. The baby was coming in 3 weeks. The father was my ex-boyfriend or my sister's ex-boyfriend, and neither of those people was me. In the house they were all going to end up. I closed my eyes. Somewhere in the apartment was crying. The clock was ticking. I thought with a strange, distant that I was wrong about everything, about Daniel, Mallory, about myself. I had thought silence was strength. I had thought not asking was protecting something. But all I'd done was let it rot for 9 months, and now it was all coming up at once. I didn't know if there was anything left. I reached my phone. I opened the browser. I typed non-invasive paternity test. I was done not knowing. Lauren showed up at noon with soup and a change of clothes and a look on her face that said, I told you so, but she wasn't going to say it. She made me eat, she made me shower, she changed the sheets while I sat on the bathroom floor with a towel around me, and then she sat down next to me and said, okay, what do you need? I told her. The Uber trips, the confession, the baby, the uncertainty. When I was done, she was quiet for a minute, and then she said, you can get a paternity test while she's still pregnant. Non-invasive, blood from the mother, cheek swab from the father, accurate after 9 weeks. She's 36 weeks, so I know what it is, I said. I looked it up last night. Then what are you waiting for? I leaned my head back against the bathroom wall. The tile was cold through the towel. I don't know if I want to know. If it's Daniel's, then this baby is tied to him forever. Tied to all of it. If it's Ethan's, then maybe it's just a baby. A normal baby. And I can pretend the rest didn't happen. Can you? Lauren looked at me. Can you pretend? I didn't answer. Because the answer was no. I'd spent 9 months pretending, and it had gotten me. Sitting on my bathroom floor while my sister slept in the next room, and my ex-boyfriend was probably in his apartment feeling sorry for him. Pretending hadn't. It had never worked. I need to know, I said. Not me. For the baby. For whoever's father it is. And Mallory, whether she liked it or not, she can't go through this. I found Mallory in eat cereal and told her, "We're doing a paternity test, non-invasive. They draw your blood and swab Dan's cheek. It takes about a week." She set the cereal bowl down. No, I'm not that. It's not a request, Mallory. I know. Her voicing. What if Daniel's? What then? What happens to me? To the baby? You think Ethan's gonna come back if it's not his? You think I don't know what will happen, I said. But I know that going into labor not knowing who the other is, and then having that hang over this kid's whole life. You made this mess. Now you have to deal with it. She stared at me. For a second, I thought she was going to cry, or scream, or throw a cereal bowl. But then something shifted. Something hard and resigned. She said, "Fine. But I'm not Daniel." "You tell him." I called Daniel. He answered the first ring. "Claire, are you okay? I've been worried. I need you to do a paternity test. The baby. Non-invasive. You'll need to do a cheek swab. I'll send you the information." A pause. "Okay, yeah, of course. Whatever you need." "Don't say whatever you need," I said. "You don't get to say that. Just do the test." I hung up. Ordered the test online. There were 6 companies, some through clinics, some mail-in, and I scheduled a mobile phlebotomist to come to the apartment. Blood. I did all of it from my phone, at the kitchen table, while Mallory watched from the couch with a look I recognized as the particular helplessness that comes from being confronted with consequences you can't have. For the first time in 9 months, I felt like I was the one in control, not the peacemaker, the silent one. Not the sister who swallowed everything and made it okay. I was the one making the calls, setting the terms, telling people what would happen and when. It wasn't power exactly. It was more like the powerlessness. And it felt strange and good, a little bit terrifying. The phlebotomist came on Thursday. A woman named Janice with a clipboard and a professional demeanor. She drew Mallory's blood in the kitchen while I watched. Mal looked at me the whole time. Daniel had already mailed in his cheek swab. He'd done it in the apartment, alone, and sent it to the lab with a trusted to me. Now we waited. The week that followed was of my life. Mallory was in the guest room mostly, emerging only to eat and use the bathroom and sit on the balcony and smoke the occasional cigarette hidden in her duffel bag. I could smell it, say anything. Daniel texted every day, usually "thinking of you" or "let me know if you need anything," and I didn't reply. I came home. I ate dinner alone in my bed. Mallory ate in the kitchen. And I thought about the test, about the baby, about the fact that in a few days I would know something that might change everything, or might change nothing. On Wednesday, the email came. I was at my work when my phone buzzed. The subject line, "Are ready." I stared at it for a full minute, thumb hovering over the screen, while my coworker talked to the next cubicle. Then I got up, walked to the bathroom, locked myself in and opened the email. I read it once. I read it again. I sat down on the closed seat and put my head in my hands. I stayed there for a long time. A bathroom fan hummed overhead, and someone washed their hands at the sink. Fluorescent light buzzed. Paternity Matt Daniel Reeves. Probability 0.97%. The baby Daniels. Not some years. Daniels. The man I'd loved for 3 years. The man who'd slept with my sister and lied about it for 9 months. He was wild. I sat there and thought about the night I'd river in my pajamas. I thought about the dress, the wine, the smirk. I thought about, I was just testing him, and you're overreacting, as they'd built between them. I thought about 9 months of flowers and coffee orders, careful, pretending. I thought, no. I wiped my face. I stood up. I unlocked the stall and walked out. And I didn't look in the mirror because I didn't want to see what I like. I went back to desk. I picked up my phone. I texted Daniel and Mallory, same message, same time. The results are in. Come to my appointment at 7. We need to talk. Then I put my phone down, and I went back to my spreadsheet, and my hands were shaking, but I was done waiting. They arrived within 20 minutes of each other. Daniel first, looking like he hadn't slept in a week, shirt wrinkled, eyes red. Mallory second, waddling in the door, one hand on her lower back, face pale. They sat on the couch, Mallory on one end, Daniel on the other, as far apart as the cushions would allow, and I stood in front of them like a judge about to deliver a verdict. The test came back, I said. The baby is Daniel's. The silence that followed was absolute. Mallory's hand went to her stomach, protective, automatic. Daniel closed his eyes. When he opened them, he was crying. not dramatically, just tears running down his face, and he didn't wipe them. "I'll take care of everything," he said. His voice was rough. "Child support, doctor's bills, whatever she needs. I'll be there. For the baby. For both of—" "Stop," I said. "Just stop." I sat down in the armchair across from them. I looked from one to the other. My sister, pregnant with my ex-boyfriend's baby, and my ex-boyfriend, who had lied to me for 9 months. And I felt, for the first time since this had started, completely calm. Not numb, not empty, calm. Like I'd been underwater for a very long time and had finally come up for air. "I'm not going to yell at you," I said. "I'm not going to call you names or throw things or make a scene. I've done enough of that in my head for the both of you. What I'm going to do is tell you what happens, and then we're all going to live." I looked at Daniel. "I can't be with you. Not because of the baby. The baby is innocent, and I will be in her life, because she's my niece and I love her already, even though she's not here yet. But I can't be with you, because you lied to me for 9 months. You looked me in the eye every single day and let me believe something that wasn't true, because you were scared. And I don't want to be with someone who's that scared. I don't want to be with someone who lets me carry suspicion around for 9 months because it's easier than telling." He opened his mouth, and I held up a hand. "Let me finish. You can be a father to this baby. You should be a father to the baby. She deserves that. But you're not my partner more. And you're not going to be, not now, not ever," he nodded. "Argue. Maybe he knew their point. Maybe, somewhere in him, he'd known this was coming from the moment he started. Then I don't even know where you betrayed me. You slept, friend, and then you made up that testing garbage, and you let me think I was crazy being upset, and then you showed up at my door 8.5 pregnant, and you let me care of you, and you didn't tell me the truth." Crying now, silently, tears dripping off her chin to her sweatshirt. "I'm sorry, Clara, I know you are. Sorry doesn't fix it, and I'm not going, it does." Steady, but my hands were in my lap, and I clasped them together to make them stop. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to have this baby, you're going to be a mother, and you'll figure it out. Because you have to. I will help you. I'll be there for the baby. I will babysit. I will bring food. I will drive you to appointments when you need it. But things between us are never going to be the way they were. I don't trust you. I may never trust you again. And if you ever do anything like this to me again, you are out of my life. Permanently. Do you understand?" She nodded, her crumpled, and she said, "I understand." I stood up. I walked to looked out at the street. The same street, a week ago, Mallory had stood on a mat crying, and I had let her in. A year. "You can both go now," I said without turning around. "Daniel, I'll text you about the baby. Mallory, you until you find a place. But we'll tomorrow." I heard them get up. I heard the door open and close. I heard Daniel's car start in the driveway, and then I was alone. I stood at the window for a long time. The sun was going down, painting the Portland skyline pink and orange, and the streetlights were one by one. What about the last 9 months? The silence, the suspicion, the flowers and the coffee orders and the pretending. I thought about how much energy I'd spent not knowing, and how much I did. Happy ending. I wasn't going to ride off into the sunset with a new man or a new life. I was 34 years old. Singer's time in 3 years. My sister was my ex-boyfriend's baby, and I was going to what came next. But for the first time in a very long time, I felt like myself. Not the version that kept the peace, not the version that swallowed things. The real version. The one who meant what she said. I turned away from the window. I walked to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of wine. The good bottle, the one for a special occasion. I carried it to the couch and sat down, my feet up on the coffee table, the way Mallory had done a week, and I drank it. Any of it. Tomorrow there would be politics, child support, custody schedules, helping Mallory find an apartment, telling our parents. Tomorrow there would be 100 small decisions and 1,000 complicated feelings. But tonight I was alone in my apartment, a glass of wine and the quiet, and for the first time in 9 months, didn't have to pretend anything. I drank the wine. I listened to the city outside, and I thought with a strange kind of relief that it was over. The lying, the high not knowing. It was over. And whatever came next, I would face it with my eyes open. Ren was born on November 1st, 2 days early, 6 pounds 4 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and a scream that could wake the dead. I was in the delivery room. Mallory had asked me, and I'd said yes, because even with everything, I was the only person she had, and I held her hand through the worst of it. And when the baby came out and they put her on Mallory's chest, I cried. I couldn't help it. This tiny, furious person, this product of the worst thing that had ever happened to me, was somehow the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Daniel was there too. He'd arrived at the hospital an hour after the birth, flowers in one hand, a stuffed bear in the other, and he'd stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure he was allowed to come in. I'd nodded at him, and he'd crossed to the bed and looked down at his daughter, and his face had done something complicated, joy and guilt and terror all mixed together, and he'd reached out one finger, and Ren had grabbed it with her whole hand, and that was that. 3 months later, my life looked nothing like it had in August. I'd taken the promotion at work, the one that required travel, the one I'd turned down twice because Daniel had said he'd miss me too much. I went to Seattle once a month, to San Francisco every other, and I liked it. I liked the hotel rooms and the room service and the quiet of being alone in a city where no one knew my name. I'd started painting again too. Watercolors, most. The thing I'd given up in college because I'd told myself I wasn't good enough. I painted on Sunday mornings at the kitchen table, while coffee brewed and the city woke up outside. Mallory had moved into a one-bedroom apartment in St. John, a neighborhood north of the city, cheaper than where she'd been before. It was small, and the windows faced a parking lot, but it was hers, and she was making it. She'd gotten a job at a coffee shop 3 blocks from her apartment. They let her bring Ren in a carrier behind the counter during slow shift, and she was tired all the time, and she was figuring. The first time Mallory said I'm sorry without an excuse, without a deflection, without a but I was drunk or I was going through something, was in December. We were sitting on her floor, wrapping Christmas presents, Ren asleep in her thing, and she just stopped mid-wrap. I'm really sorry. For every. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I know what I did. I looked at her. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't saying. She was just looking. The way I'd always wanted. I know, said. Thank you for saying it. I didn't say her. I wasn't there yet. Maybe I never would be, but I thank you. And Daniel came around. He saw Ren and Saturday morning, usually. He'd pick her up and take her to the park or the zoo or just walk her around the neighborhood. He and Light. We exchanged texts about feeding schedules and doctor's appointments and Ren's latest stone, and we didn't talk about the past, and we didn't talk about the future. It was a new kind of friendship, neither romantic nor just functional. 2 people tied together by a child and planned, figuring out how to be in each other's lives without Lauren was. She came over for wine Wednesdays, and she never said, told you so, even have. And she helped me paint the bath in January. And she set me up on a date with a physical therapist from her hospital in February. And it was fine, nice even, wasn't ready. And it was a Tuesday in late February. Knock. Kitchen. Watercolors the table. Half-finished painting of the Fremont Bridge light. The knock came in the afternoon. Soft raps, and for half a second, I felt that old thing in my chest. The one that said something bad. I opened it. It was the mail carrier, holding a package. In here, I signed. I took the package, art supplies I'd ordered online, door. I stood in the entryway for a moment, holding the box, just laughed. Because 6 months ago, a knock at the door had meant my whole life falling apart. Today, watercolor paper. That was about life, I thought. It didn't announce itself with fanfare. It just kept coming, one ordinary after another, and you either walked through it. I set the package on the counter. My phone buzzed, a text from Mallory. Ren said mama to sort of. Sounded more like Baba, but I'm counting it. Smiled and typed back, definitely counts, and video. Looked around my apartment, the paintings on the wall, the coffee mug in the sink, on the floor. It was my apartment, my life. Not perfect, not clean, not the life I'd planned, but it was mine, and I was in it. Not silent anymore. I thought about it in August. The one who opened the door and let her sister in because she had to close it. The one who spent 9 months pretending because the truth was too heavy. The one who stood in a bathroom stall at work, holding a phone that said 99.97% know if she could breathe. That woman was still here, somewhere. Wasn't in charge anymore. I picked up my keys. I had a meeting across town, and the sun was out and I wanted to walk. I opened the door, stepped outside, closed behind me. The air was cold and sharp, late winter in Portland, and the sky was that particular gray-blue that meant it might rain later or might not. I started walking down the sidewalk, toward the bus stop, toward the meeting, toward whatever came next. I didn't look back.